little throat cold, so bear with me, but we're going to check in on Bitcoin, crypto, MSTR, which altcoins I'm watching, and what to expect here in the short term as we have a bit of fear alleviation. Certainly last week, a massive drop down. Well, 2 weeks ago, massive drop down. Last Monday, gap down open, marking a temporary fear bottom. And we have to help answer, is that the bottom for a while, or can we head lower? So what matters most to me is, can bulls confirm the daily uptrend from here? In the short term, I was watching Bitcoin yesterday for a 4-hour rising wedge, and that confirmed. And then I was looking for that to turn into a 4-hour head and shoulders, and that confirmed. But got to give bulls credit. They did a good job of holding the left neckline of support at 83,000. And as far as what we're doing now, it's pretty much the same as the NASDAQ, which is often the case during regular trading hours. So we definitely have to be watching the NASDAQ. But when this move tops out, do we confirm the uptrend? We know bigger picture, we're scouting the monthly high or low. We're bouncing off EMA 12 at the moment for the last couple of months. And on the daily, the most important resistance zone from here is essentially 87.5 to 88.5. And I'm watching for the possibility of a setup where there's a bunch of names that may form an inverse head and shoulders type of setup, where if we fail this resistance, confirm the trend change is what's needed. We know it's a big enough bounce at this point to scout a daily high or low as the result of next consolidation. And I will be looking long on Bitcoin and MSTR for a daily high or low. But with where we stand right now and the fact that we've already bounced 10% plus, I don't like the risk reward of looking long here. I need that daily consolidation. And you look at the NASDAQ and it's similar, just in the sense that we've been bouncing. We're struggling at the Wednesday high still, but we haven't topped out yet. And when we do top out, the bulls must confirm the daily uptrend. And again, that's that potential inverse head and shoulders type of setup there as well. So essentially, aggressive bears are watching for daily consolidation in Bitcoin and altcoins, and patient bulls are waiting for daily higher lows. So the question into tomorrow is, how long can bulls keep the higher low everyday pattern going to fend off that daily consolidation? Same as the NASDAQ. The dominance chart is still up at the highs, so we know nothing's shifting. Again, the only way we're going to see altcoins outperform, the dominance chart losing the weekly higher lows, will be an indication of a shift being underway, because we've been setting weekly higher lows at this point the entirety of 2025. So if that continues to be the case, nothing is changing. And when we lose the weekly higher low, then we know something is changing. MSTR has relative strength comparative to both Bitcoin and the NASDAQ. How can we say so? Well, look at the weekly chart. We failed to drop to a weekly lower low. Bitcoin did drop to the lower low. Granted, no significant follow through, but we broke support. MSTR did not. And so again, MSTR, we're looking at a significant bounce. Can we confirm the daily uptrend once we top out? So I'm scouting MSTR for a daily high or low. I've been poking around at MSTY for the dividend cash flow. Same deal, looking for the monthly high or low. Still need to do further research into this name. It's the MSTR Option Income Strategy ETF, but that would be nice to have a monthly high or low, longer term swing trade to rack up some dividends as well, along with some price appreciation. So I still got to do a bit more research on that, but that is on the table for me. Essentially, over the next couple of weeks, we're scouting the monthly higher lows in Bitcoin and MSTR. And so for me, the burden of proof is on bears to show me that the monthly higher low is not forming, because the more likely scenario for me is that it is forming. If MSTR is not going to break support in massive fear, which we saw last week, then that's a great sign. MSTR also today announced more buying of Bitcoin in the lower 80,000s. Still no word on GME buying Bitcoin, but again, GME, relative strength. MSTR and GME have given us relative strength where, again, last week bulls were just fine while so many things had huge gap downs. And so, there's some insider buying going on and raised funds for buying Bitcoin. Same deal. There's a lot of space for a daily higher low here. So patient bulls waiting for daily consolidation on all of these names. I'd like to see hourly oversold mark the daily higher lows into, ideally, continuation. That would make me most comfortable in terms of looking for that entry and being confident that bulls are setting the monthly higher lows. With regards to altcoins, I'm watching this on ETH 4 hour. You could make the argument it's an ascending triangle, which is a bullish pattern, just higher lows and a horizontal resistance level. Still overall lagging behind on the bounce, just in the sense that we haven't broken the high of Wednesday yet, which is the same as the NASDAQ. ETH looks a lot more like the NASDAQ. Bitcoin broke its high of Wednesday, so it's stronger on its bounce. But again, just, daily EMA 12 has been resistance for 3 weeks almost at this point. Nothing changes as long as that is the case. I am watching for ETH BTC to get its weekly bounce going. I do believe that is shaping up, but we have to keep in mind we can bounce for 3 weeks and just set a lower high. So not looking for a long-term shift here just yet. OM, we got to talk about OM, right? Drama. OM collapse. So it's unfortunate whenever this happens, just because a lot of people got crushed. And again, it's just always the reminder of stop losses to prevent something like this happening. But it also is disheartening in the sense that, again, for me, altcoins are penny stocks, and most of them are going to fail. And, yes, you get a penny stock like Monster Beverage that makes it. 0.1% of penny stocks make it. And then people point to that as well, look, this one did it, so maybe mine's going to do it. Now, I'm not talking about your altcoin. The altcoin you've chosen to be the winner, it's probably going to be the winner. But the other 99.9% are likely to fail. So again, we can utilize these as trading vehicles for profit, but we have to remind ourselves that the odds are against us, long-term bullish in altcoins as an aggregate. So OM, I posted on Twitter that I made a quick clip over the weekend. Every weekend I take Chart Guys members' altcoin requests and do some videos. And the takeaway for me on OM was, far more often than not, you see an altcoin doing its own thing and having a big bull move. And once it tops out, it then sees a significant amount of relative weakness for a prolonged period of time. And, we had that with Mana and Sand in the, metaverse world. You've had it with, obviously, Sol. You've had it with, there's so many names where this is the alt bull. This is where the best gains are. This is where the relative strength is. And once that top is set, usually it's not that fast, right? Usually it's a 6 to 12 month slow bleed of just relative consistent weakness. This was all at once. What we're looking at from here is, I certainly wouldn't suggest anybody trade this, but we topped out on a bounce at 138. That's now the most important resistance. Is this project going to zero? I have no idea. It's certainly possible, but we're fading back down to the 37-cent low and just capital blowing up. And again, just trust. The trust in the crypto altcoin space is so low that obviously that sentiment shifts, right? A lot of people look at that and say, oh, that means alt season's coming. I'm not as confident, but it's bad out there, right? And yeah, things can go up fast and hard eventually, but I just am doing my best to say that if you are going to hold a long-term position in a crypto altcoin, it's house money and all profit. That's the way you should be approaching this space. Trade a little bit to get some profit. You're up 50%, you're up 100%. Sell your, what you put in, let the rest ride if you want. Worst case scenario, you don't lose anything. But again, the odds are stacked against you in this space, just like the penny stock world. And the reason for that is penny stocks just create shares out of thin air and sell them with dilution. And obviously, depending on the tokenomics of these different altcoins, they can dump on you as well. All that said, the altcoins that are standing out to me for strength, TRX, we've been highlighting this one for a while just because it had such a unique setup, sideways tightening range, while most things are really weak and dropping down over the last few months. So we broke this equilibrium bullish. The first bull break was 24.37. Actually 24.18, 24.37 right behind it. And then we broke the second level of 25.09. So that's a great start. Next major resistance is 27.42. Bulls want to see a healthy daily high or low when we top out. Again, most altcoins at this point, if you're looking long altcoins, you're waiting for daily consolidation. If you want good risk reward for an entry. So a name like TRX, if we lose the 4-hour uptrend, then we're scouting the daily high or low. We're watching hourly oversold conditions. Ideally, bulls want to hold any back test of this resistance as support to keep that daily consolidation healthy. You get back more than that, it's a little bit of a red flag, but definitely want to hold this back test as support. Another name we've been watching for the bulls is CRV. Again, just like MSTR, we did not break weekly support. That makes it stand out for strength. And then on this bull break, we just hit the highest level in months. Any altcoin that's hit the highest level in months is standing out. Daily consolidation has begun here. It is a potential daily bull flag at this point. But again, we're looking for a higher low. And can the bulls keep this move going? We're still, battling around with this resistance. There was a resistance atop at 61, 66.9, 608. So we got above it, but we're still chopping around right at that level. And bulls definitely want to see that prior resistance zone turn into support. So those are two names that have been standing out on the stronger side. I've also been watching Binance just because I love the clarity of the weekly equilibrium. We knew to be watching for a weekly high or low is most likely. This is telling me Binance volatility is going to pick up in May. We're going to look to keep tightening up. Ideally, the bulls officially set the weekly high or low, which they have not done yet. Then anything under 645 will just be a lower high to keep tightening up. It's possible we keep tightening up for another 2-3 weeks or even more, but we know that as we constrict and get tighter, we're getting closer and closer to a break of a constricting range, which means a spike in volume and a spike in volatility. And as traders, that means a spike in opportunity. So still watching Binance for that. The other one I'm keeping an eye on is, of course, XRP, just because we broke. If there was a time to roll over, it was a week ago where you hold support and you hold it and you hold it and you hold it and you finally lose it and bulls popped right back above it. And so what chart guys Lamont will say using volume profile analysis is that's a lack of acceptance under $2, which is a good sign for the bulls. We've been watching this daily falling wedge. Bitcoin's been a potential daily falling wedge. But again, what I care more about than the falling wedge is, do we confirm the daily uptrend once we top out to follow through with the weekly bounces and continue to prove to us that, yes, fear is alleviated in the short term. And this recovery can keep it going for a while. So those are the names that I'm looking at. And some traders with their style, they're jumping around to a bunch of different names, whether something comes up on their scan or whatever it is for their criteria. I've never traded that way. I like to get familiar with a name. I like the continuity. So I've been tracking these names as my lead bulls for the last, couple weeks because you got to get used to how it trades. You got to get used to its normal volume, its normal bid-ask spread, its liquidity, all these things. And then, you just find the time frames where you're comfortable with the most likely scenarios, and then you're zooming in to see if it's forming. I just find that method of scouting trades and names to be interested in as much more beneficial. And also, I'm not a crypto-only trader, right? So I'm focused on stocks primarily. And if I am keeping an eye on altcoins, it's usually just 2 to 4 that I'm keeping my eye on, and it is these names at this point. Definitely still watching Ethereum for whenever ETH BTC can find a bottom, but I am not I'm not gonna be nailing that bottom in the sense that I'm not gonna go aggressive. I need bulls to prove something to me. And again, ETH BTC, we keep saying it. When's the last time we've confirmed a weekly uptrend? We have not confirmed a weekly uptrend on this chart in years. So we know that when that happens, something is significantly changing. And so if you're looking long term, that's a signal that you're looking for. And it's going to take months to shape up. You got to bounce for weeks. You got to consolidate for a couple of weeks. You got to see continuation for a couple of weeks. So when you're on the longer term time frames, we just got to remind ourselves it takes a while for trend changes to shape up. All right, reading the chat room here to answer some questions. NASDAQ still bouncing, as is Bitcoin. Head and Shoulders can still play out. It's less likely, right? Obviously, if it was going to be a successful one, you want to break both necklines of support. I won't call it a failure until we break 86 to new bounce highs. You know, right now we're just chopping sideways. It's possible we roll over tomorrow into daily consolidation. But, you know, if I'm entering bearish on that right shoulder or the break of support, obviously there's red flags in the lack of bear follow through. MSTY dividend, I can't explain about the dividend because like I said, I got to do more research. That's what AI is for, right? Ask AI. Tell me about MSTY dividend, and it will give you a way better answer than I could. That's the other thing. Yeah, OM is still outperforming ETH on the year. Looking at that chart. You can be mad because it dumped 94%. But yeah, anything that runs up thousands of percent, you know that you're going to retrace significantly. Welcome, Adam, to the live stream. Link, sure, link. So altcoin, the most important altcoin resistance is this weekly lower high. And we were looking at that as weekly bear flags on a lot of these names, and a lot of them confirm the weekly bear flags, but a lack of follow through. And so again, what I'm going to be watching for, my ideal setup would be get this weekly inverse head and shoulders. Go to the 2-day chart to smooth it down a little bit. I would like to see, again, if I'm cash and I want to be comfortable, give me a leg up to say, okay, bulls are proving something. We've got space for the higher low now. Then I scout the entry on the higher low to have better risk and reward. And then ideally, we confirm that trend change to tell us, yes, weekly bounces are going to see follow through. Because where we stand right now on Link, if we don't break 16, the bears keep their complete control of the weekly downtrend. So there are names that have already broken that end of March weekly lower high resistance, like CRV. So you compare them side by side, and that's where we see glaring relative strength or weakness, depending on what we're looking at. But any name that's not breaking the weekly lower high from the end of March wants to see a big enough bounce retracement to create the space for the trend change attempt. And many times that will shape up as an inverse head and shoulders. Yeah, bunch of the altcoins in slow bleed forever. Thoughts on Bitcoin Cash? I haven't looked at this chart in forever. BCH. So again, another one where bulls want to see this inverse head and shoulders shape up. We can go to the 2-day. There's your left shoulder. We fail that resistance. We must hold the low and then break those levels. And then we'll say, hey, altcoin bulls are doing something for the first time in 2025. So there's just different versions of what this chart looks like. There's a bear break with no follow through into the bounds, but we've got to change the trends. You know, the bear break with no follow through tells us, hey, pay attention. Bears are getting tired, but we also have to see the bulls start to prove it too. Familiarity. QQQ and SPY, I did the update over the weekend. Check out that video. It's very in-depth. It's the same thing. Once QQQ and SPY top out on this bounce, do we confirm the daily trend change? We have to do that. There are times, in 2022, the NASDAQ bounced 17% straight up, no trend change, and then rolled over to lower lows. You've got to change the trends on the way up to establish support on the way up. That's the next most important thing for me this week. When we top out, how much do we retrace during daily consolidation? Do we confirm the daily uptrend to tell us, yeah, fear's over for now, weekly bounces are going to follow through? Not going to look at the yen. We're here for crypto. GALA, very weak. So again, if I'm going to be looking bullish, I need another leg up, get up towards that weekly lower high resistance and try and shape up that inverse head and shoulders. Here's the 2-day time frame. This is a very bearish chart still. I would need a move up to 16 plus, 17 plus to then be looking for this type of setup. So everything we just looked at, this is one of the weaker names, not to mention there is very little liquidity and volume. Better, obviously, using the Tether version. 500 million, $5 million a day. A little more, 5 to 10 million. But again, need that leg up. Get close to that resistance. You don't have to break it on the first try, but you've got to give yourself the space to hold the higher low when you consolidate. Do I use leverage? No. I've never used leverage in crypto ever. I'll be on margin in my stock account, and I very rarely will exceed the cash that I have in there. I have, but very rarely. And it's easy for me to say, don't trade on margin, but I come from 2017 crypto where you could change your life with Bitcoin and Ethereum. And that's no longer the case because of the increase in liquidity and the law of diminishing returns as far as market cap increases. You could change your life over a span of decades, but Bitcoin gave life-changing opportunities in a 6-month window in 2017. So it'd be easy for me to say, well, I didn't need any leverage and yada, yada, yada. But again, that was a window in time that is now gone, at least for Bitcoin and Ethereum. Maybe not, low cap altcoins that can still go at 500%, 1000% real quick or whatever. But if you're a newer trader using margin, the probabilities are you're going to blow up. The overwhelming probabilities. If I'm looking at the NASDAQ for oversold or overbought, do I use RSI on futures? I use futures. More and more using the futures chart just because it's more data. If you're only looking at QQQ, data. If you're only looking at QQQ, you are limiting the amount of available data. Data, what should I say? Data, I say data. So again, perfect AI question. If China and US settle their trade dispute, which sector do I think will gain the most? AI will give you a better answer than me. I don't know. Probably the names that were most negatively impacted. Certainly would be watching the Chinese names like Baba, FXI, etc. But that's definitely something I would plug into AI. I posted today on my Twitter, this is how I use AI as a trader. And it's essentially asking fundamental questions for it to tell me which names to look at. And then I use my skill set of technical analysis to then establish a trade game plan on that name. Thanks, Kempo. Glad you're liking the swing report. Dot. Weak bounce at this point. Again, we're nowhere near that weekly lower high. We're just walking it down, weekly lower high, lower high, lower high. Bulls need another leg up to get close to that 477 resistance. Again, I'm on 2-day time frames for many names for that. You've got to get that leg up to create the space. As of right now, this is a very weak bounce. I look at this chart. Do I see anything bullish? No. You know, could I draw and hope that it's a falling wedge? Yes. So if I'm a real aggressive bull, I'm watching for this to try and be a falling wedge. But you just got to approach it, you know, not giving the bulls any slack. Saying, all right, Dot, this is a weak bounce. Show me something, bulls. Go on offense. Show me something is shifting from the slow bleed of the last 4 months. It is definitely important to zoom out. All right, a few more here. SUI. Same deal. One more leg up. Get to that weekly resistance. Get closer. Need one more push up. Just make a simple statement, right? When I look at something like this, I draw that weekly lower high and say absolutely nothing changes from full bear control if that is resistance. And that is still 30% to the upside. So we've got to see something develop to show us the bulls can shift and change the trend. Cake. I like cake. That's its own thing there. Nice and clear weekly equilibrium. So I'm just viewing this as nice big bounce, higher low, lower high. We're trying for the higher low here. What do we need? A daily trend change to the bulls for the weekly higher low to be set. Daily consolidation is already underway. We must hold the lows of where we came from and break 207 to set the weekly higher low. And then we just look for this to continue tightening into May. But the bulls still have the proving to do to confirm this new weekly higher low for a continued tightening equilibrium. RVN. Just a note on Thursday, unless I get worse sickness, I'm going to do a long-term patterns video, and I will talk about Bitcoin in there, and Ethereum. But the broader market, stocks, you know, after this fear, 3-month, 6-month, yearly charts, where do we stand and what are we looking at? That's going to be a theme. So that'll be Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern, unless I push it back. But let's assume it's on for now. Same deal. RVN. Last weekly lower high. This is just a slow bleed, bear flag, bear flag, bear flag. Again, the only hopium here, falling wedges I like a lot, but it has to align with the longer term scenario, the longer term time frame, most likely scenario. What do I mean by that? Give me a 5-minute falling wedge where I know I'm scouting an hourly higher low is most likely. Give me a daily falling wedge where I know a monthly higher low, Bitcoin, Ripple, XRP, I should say. Give me a daily falling wedge where a monthly higher low is the most likely scenario. But if you give me a falling wedge when we're in a downtrend on all time frames, I don't have high conviction in that pattern at all. Not all patterns are created equal by any stretch of the imagination. It's all context. But bulls are hoping that's a falling wedge. Again, I don't have high conviction that it is. I got to see another leg up. Put that weekly lower high resistance in play. And then confirm a trend change longer term for weekly bounce follow through. All right, thanks for the likes and the shares. So you can see, all the altcoins, we're looking at similar things. We know what most of them look like, and that helps us pick out the ones. TRX is doing its own thing. CRV looks like these, but much stronger. There's names like DOT that stand out, weaker. Even ETH. I mean, where's that ETH weekly lower high? Not even close. We need another 10% if we're going to try and shape up an inverse head and shoulders. So again, just ensure you could be looking bullish. I'm looking for bullish entries, but just stay critical. Prove it to me, bulls. Prove to me something is shifting. I cannot make assumptions that you're going to shift things when you've been doing nothing for 4+ months. All right. Thanks again. Do good things. See you Thursday. Long-term patterns.